Let's testify tonight. Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord. But you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. I will tell the word of the hope I have found. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has he done it for anyone else? I said, has he done it for anyone else? Cause the God that I serve is always at work. Has he done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our body was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it up. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift him high. Come on, testify the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing it. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, let's do that right now, Murfreesboro.
And, well, I'm way off center, aren't I? And also, the timer should not be visible. Hold on, let me fix that. And, where's the timer? Countdown timer, there it is. Okay. Turn that off, unless we need it later. And, let's see, I can't really move the camera. Let's see if I can manage to slide the seat over without disturbing. Well, that'll have to do. So my babysitting duties have doubled today. Since the wife is out picking up some necessary supplies. And so I am here with, of course, everybody's favorite little rat slash bat slash alien. Yes, I'm talking about you, to Pring. But also, I have here the newest member of the family, I guess. Yeah, see if we can get her up there. There we go. And I'm forgetting her name. What is your name? I know that your nickname is like Fizzy. It's like Fizkit, I think. IZZ. Is it K? No, it's a character from the Dark Crystal. Uh, Pet. Fizzgig. Fizzgig. And you might be wondering, why in the world would you name her Fizzgig? And if you know what Fizzgig looks like, you would understand. Let's see if I can. Let's see. Zoom in. I have a picture of Fizzgig here from the movie that allow me to show you. Sure. So that is Fizzgig from the movie, and as you can see, she's just like a slightly cuter version of her. So there you go. So that's about all that's new today. Is Regetta been planning on getting Fizzgig from her current, now former owners, but we had to arrange a time, and so I was just like, let's just get this over with. So we drove up there because Fizzgig was living in Kentucky, so it was about 2 hours up and 2 hours back. So that was fun. All right. SpaceX Starship launch was a success so far. Okay. I mean, honestly, I've kind of, I'm a little Elon Musk out this year. With all the crap that he did with the government, and then trying to getting all these exclusive contracts at the same time, not a fan. But I'm glad the launch was successful, assuming there are people on there. Captain Phantom there says, prayers for my mom. She fell and broke her hip. Oh, man. I know that is a fairly common injury for elderly folks, but that sucks. I hope that she has a quick and full recovery. But I am going to my official prayer list right now and adding her. Let's see. What are you fussing about? No, can't go down there. I don't want you to fall and hurt yourself. Nerd's mom broke her hip. All right, Captain, I got that on the official list, but please give me updates as she recovers. Let me know how she's doing. Miss Moneypenny is in the house, and Stanley is here. So it looks like they're having trouble with the reusable heat shields during re-entry. Uh-oh, well, that's not good. Multi-Gun Man says, hello, everyone. But you were the first one in the chat saying hi. But now you're saying hi to everyone else, I suppose. We need no longer fear the banana. Well, that is true. The largest flying object ever built. Got to have some respect for that. I didn't know that, but okay. Well, isn't he winning the contracts? If lying about the given situation and then using that lie to maneuver himself into a better position to get said contract is winning the contract, sure. And that one I'm particularly talking about his diss on Verizon's network that he levied during the after the plane went down in D.C. and that he was blaming Verizon because their equipment was just not up to the task. The funny thing is that Verizon had only been contracted by the government a few years earlier to renovate and update the air traffic control systems, and they were not given the full budget to do everything all at once. And so there is some old equipment in there that may or may not have been responsible for the crash, but that old equipment was not Verizon equipment. And so his whole thing, so then what he did was he says, well, you know, what we need is to get, what's the name of his satellite company? Earthlink. Is it Earthlink? No. Is it? I don't remember. Whatever the name of his satellite company, that they're going to provide what they need, and that will be much, much better. Basically, robbing Verizon of a multi-billion-dollar contract that, honestly, like I said, that was a straight. And the only, I do know something about this because, while some of this was just getting going, I was working for Verizon. So. So I have no respect for a person that is willing to straight up lie about his competition in order to get an edge. Let's see, yeah, by providing the best service at the best price. No. Do you think, pound for pound, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not, I think that Elon has done some good things for the tech field. I mean, he's honestly he's not the engineer that some people think he is, because most of the tech is just stuff that he's put money into that was already like Tesla. Even though he's officially listed as a founder of Tesla, Tesla was an existing company when he took it over. The Tesla Roadster was already well into design and stuff before he came in and kind of took over the company. Now, is that all bad? No, because by getting Tesla the financing they needed and giving it the push that he needed, or that they needed, they managed to push the electric car industry forward. The irony is that he absolutely pushed the electric car company forward to where now he makes some of the crappiest electric cars out there, and because the entire industry has surpassed him, and so, you know, there's that. I did say hi to you first. You must have missed it. I did say hi. I did see that, but it was before I was on screen. Well, Boeing's offering got stuck. I'm not sure. Yeah, Starlink. That's what it is. Yes. Boeing's offering got stuck. I don't know what Boeing's offering was. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. It's been a year since Bird of Prey passed. Wish I knew more. Yeah, it's sad, but, unfortunately, it's one of those things we all have to kind of move on. Is Starlink a government contract? Yes, the government has signed multiple contracts with Starlink. And so, but that's, and Starlink, quite frankly, and that's the other thing, is that the global communications network was also run by Verizon, because Verizon is the leader in communications, and they still are. Starlink is newer, and and people like to think that Starlink is more dependable. But it's funny because, now all the sailors on all the ships can get internet, and it's like, talk to an actual sailor about how great that internet service is. So let's see. So yeah, Starlink, like let's see, there's a single contract here for 1.8 billion. Let's see, another one for 23 million, another one for 70 million. Let's see. Uh, yeah, and here's the one where they're taking over air traffic control. That's 2.4 billion. Um, and they're eligible for 42 billion in rural broadband grants from the Commerce Department. Now, I'm not a big fan of government grants, but I would dare say he earned because Starlink is available in areas where land internet is not. So yeah. Well, the gunman says, "What a surprise! A billionaire is or was playing dirty pool and screwed over Verizon. Go figure." Well, I mean, yeah, it's not exactly far fetched. And don't get me wrong, there are some people and many people, in fact, that believe that it's perfectly okay to be dishonest because the ultimate goal is winning, right? So if winning is more important than any other factor, including honesty or anything like that, then sure. But I'm not a fan of that. I really don't like that. There's a legal term for it. It's called fraud. The problem is that if the Department of Justice is basically being controlled directly by the executive branch, nothing will ever happen about it. Boeing had a government contract, sent a module to ISS, but it got stuck and stranded the crew there for. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. And Musk had to send a SpaceX rocket to rescue them. I like that you put rescue in quotes. Yeah, I don't know all the details. There's more to that story than the simplistic view that you hear from either side. Uh, and don't get me wrong, I'm glad SpaceX was able to bring them home. I truly am. Uh, and anytime if SpaceX is launching and it's successful, I'm glad. If it fails, I'm sad. However, do I, the problem is that, the owner of SpaceX is a James Bond supervillain. Aravic says, "Hello, how you doing, Aravic?" Well, you'd be happy to hear that Canada canceled their Starlink contract, so we're going to build something more expensive and worse instead. Well, see, now in the case of Canada, I think Starlink would have made more sense. Like the United States has a lot more infrastructure, especially broadband infrastructure, than Canada. But and so I honestly, yeah, I think that Canada canceling the Starlink contract out of spite was kind of stupid. I would say if they are, like the old say, if they are the best product, then I don't care who the CEO is really by that product. If you don't care for the politics of the president of Ford Motor Company, but Ford is making the best and most affordable cars, then you get a Ford. If just like if you don't like the politics of a particular actor, but they make a good movie, you still go see the movie. When I saw Fantastic Four, I did not give a crap about Pedro Pascal or Vanessa Kirby or any of the rest of the cast as far as their political leanings. I didn't care about their personal doings. All I cared about was, are they going to do the Fantastic Four justice in this movie? And I was thankful that I think that they did. But I think because boycotting a company due to the beliefs of any employee of that company, even the CEO, is kind of silly. I would not, my feelings about Tesla as a car brand have nothing to do with Elon Musk as a person. I have two big problems with Teslas. One, they're built very cheaply. as time has now shown, especially, and the Cybertruck is a joke as far as all the problems they've had with that. But on top of that, they are actively trying to take away the income of rideshare drivers with their cyber cap. And, you could argue that, well, hey, progress must progress, but fine. Then, who's going to take care of all the Uber, Lyft, etc. drivers that are now out of an income? That there is a cost to these kinds of things, and I can't help but think of things like the ultimate computer. Is that I think there are some jobs that should be left in the hands of humans, even if machines can do it more effectively. And I would say driving is one of those things. Let's see. Yeah, I saw a homesteader on YouTube says his Starlink kind of sucks in remote West Virginia. Yeah, Starlink is the thing about Starlink is its biggest strength is that as long as their satellites don't malfunction or anything, you can get coverage in places where no other service will work. However, there are other satellite phones you can get. Like Verizon actually has satellite phones, so you can use it out in the bush of Alaska or whatever. They just don't sell satellite internet generally because satellite internet sucks. And part of the reason that satellite internet sucks so bad is that it's really only high speed in one direction. The basic technology of satellite internet is that your downloads come beamed from the satellite to your receiver and onto your computer, and they're very fast. But your uploads are basically dial up. And so, yeah, have fun with that. So you saw a super strong system to connect to the closest cell tower, and it worked much better. Oh, okay. So you're talking about the dude, the homesteader. Yeah. So if you could, because cell towers are just radio towers, and a cell phone, while it doesn't look like it by modern standards, a cell phone is really just a two-way radio. It's just that the transmitter receiver, like you guys mostly too young to remember this, but cell phones used to have little antennas that popped out when you had bad reception, you pull out the antennas so you can get a little better. But cell phones, in general, are are just two-way radios with a little bit more tech in them, right? And so when we talk about a cellular signal, it's regardless of whether it's 1G through 5G, it doesn't really matter. They're all just radio signals at different frequencies. And so the if you had a regular old cell phone with regular old cell phone service, but you hooked it up to a system that boosted its ability to transmit and receive by, say, 100-fold, which wouldn't be too hard. All you'd really need is a superior power supply, and the rest would actually, if you're an electrical engineer or something, would be child's play. And so if you did something like that, yeah, you could absolutely boost the range of a cell phone exponentially. But the reason that the cell phone companies don't do this is not evil greed corporation wants to be evil greed. It's because of the fact that you'd have to be carrying around a suitcase full of batteries for that to work for any length of time. As a Canadian, I can tell you firsthand we're currently ruled by a pack of buffoons, which I did not vote for. Well, as an American, I would say the same. But they do produce the best, cheapest electric car. You'd probably, but if they produce the best, cheapest electric car, you'd probably still buy one. If they, I would be torn. If Tesla actually was making the best economical electric car on the market, like say the fantasy that he's always been talking about like the $30,000 Cybertruck, or whatever, if that actually materialized, right? Would I, and assuming the Cybertruck actually wasn't glued together and stuff, they then would I buy one? I'd be really, really torn on it because not because of Elon's behavior himself, but because of the fact that the company, I'd be supporting a company that's actively trying to take away my income. Notice I'm not saying steal, but I'm not saying they're doing anything illegal, just immoral. Although if you can get all cars on the road self-driving and able to communicate, then it would work to eliminate nearly all accidents. I would say that's true to a point. Number one, first of all, if you actually getting all cars into a self-driving system would require one thing that we ain't going to do, and that's spend trillions of dollars to completely rebuild our road system. Because even the vaunted Tesla autopilot system has a lot of trouble if you're in a one-lane country highway that's not well marked and stuff like that. It's most of the self-driving systems out there, in part, either use lidar or cameras in order to survey the environment around them, and that's mostly to avoid collision. But one of the things they do is keep an eye on the stripes of the road to make sure that you're in the proper lane and all that, and then, so you can't do lane changes if the car can't see the lanes. And the problem is that the American roads, in fact, roads in almost any country that I can think of, are just not up to it. Sure, you can do, like, for example, what Ford is doing with their self-driving system, it's called Blue Cruise, is it only works on the freeways. And that actually makes a lot of sense because once you get onto side streets is when you start having all the problems. You don't see, at least not too often, you don't hear about Teslas in autopilot getting into massive accidents on the freeway. It's more likely to happen at an unmarked intersection or some other kind of situation that is more rural. So if you could rebuild the entire road system, and I mean the entire road system, from every driveway to every freeway, and it would be a relatively simple thing from a technological standpoint, but a ridiculously expensive proposition when you're talking about the actual implementation. Because all you really need to do is every, say, 10 feet or so, put a small microchip in that you would implant into the road, and these would basically communicate with the car where the center of the lane is, because you put it in the center of each lane, how many lanes are on the current street, and which lane you are in of those lanes. So like usually they say lane 1 is the lane closest to the sidewalk, lane 2 would be the next lane, lane 3 would be the next, etc. So it would say, this direction there are 3 lanes, you're currently in lane 2. And it could also transmit like the nearest vehicles around you based on the other chips in the other lanes. That'd be wonderful, and it would work probably nearly flawlessly. The problem is that, yeah, it would cost trillions of dollars to actually do. And nobody's going to spend that kind of... That's a long way off. Yeah, I don't know that it'll ever happen, to be honest. I think realistically, before we actually got self-driving cars that could effectively replace all human drivers, I think it would be more likely that we would have self-driving aerial vehicles. And because that would actually be safer. Robert says, shalom, shalom, shalom. Well, that's why they're testing in city centers. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. They're saying, "Oh, well, look at how much it's reduced accidents in area." And notice they're also very careful about what cities they're testing in. They're using cities where the streets are well maintained as far as the stripes and stuff like that, so that they can basically get the best possible circumstance. If they really want to test the ability of the cyber cab, have it start driving out in Woodbury, Tennessee, or something, and see if it can if how well it can do. Because I would dare say you'd have a lot of wrecked cyber cabs. But is that Puka? Is she doing? No, unfortunately, Arvik Puka has passed away. So, which is one of the main reasons that we have this little beast, Fizzgig. And that was a very, I'll tell you, and that it's been a rough few days for Mrs. Salty or Pepper. She has, she loved that dog so much, um, you know, and we buried her in the backyard, and you know, it's rough. She was 9 years old, so relatively young for a Pomeranian, but it happens. Died of heart failure. I don't think EVs will ever replace the internal combustion engine. Probably sooner or later, the fascination with them will probably die off. I semi agree with you, Robert. I do think the internal combustion engine is going to be replaced. I don't know that EVs will be the ultimate replacement. I think that EVs are a good intern vehicle because I will tell you, and I know we're going on this weird, nothing to do with Leviticus conversation, but I do think that this is something to think about. EVs, and I'm not some crazy environmentalist tree hugger that is like, oh, internal combustion engines are killing us all. I'm not suggesting that. Although I will suggest that petroleum is a limited resource. It's a non-renewable resource. Once and granted, it might be 1,000 years, it might be 10 years. I don't know. I'm not a geologist, but eventually the world's oil reserves will run out. And the funny thing is, you have scientists saying that, oh, the oil reserves are going to run out in the next 20 years. You have other scientists that say it'll run out in 20,000 years. I don't know the answer to that, but I don't care because eventually they're going to run out, which means that it's a good idea to do anything and everything we can to keep that supply lasting as long as possible. And number one, and number two, eventually we'll have to get off of petroleum as a fuel altogether. And I think that considering there are some things that currently we absolutely need petroleum to do. For example, tires are partially a petroleum product, right? We don't have a completely synthetic version of a tire yet. The lubrication that is in cars, while we have synthetic oils, they are prohibitively more expensive, and so most newer cars will use a synthetic hybrid. It's a combination of petroleum and synthetic oil. But plastics, petroleum products, and we use plastics on, oh my gosh, name a product, it probably has some plastic in it, right? So any type of plastic requires petroleum. And I think it's more important that we preserve our petroleum supply for plastics than for fuel, especially if there's alternatives for that fuel. And I think there are. As far as, I'm while I don't think hydroelectric is ever going to be a whole lot, I do think that there is a potential huge future in geothermal. It really wouldn't be very hard to make. In fact, it's very simple to make a geothermal system. It's simple, but it's a lot of work. because it involves digging a very, very deep hole. But you can do it. They So I think things like geothermal, nuclear power, especially if we can ever get away to harvest, was it helium-3 from the moon or something, for so we can get fusion reactors going. All that I think would be very promising. However, I also and I think all these should be developed. And as far as vehicles are concerned, are EVs completely without petroleum? No, because there's petroleum in all the plastic parts and stuff like that in an EV. But it doesn't burn it to move, right? And I will. No, you haven't missed the reading, Arabic. I'm going to get to it in just a minute after this little rant. And the other thing is, as a consumer, and this is the real, as far as where the rubber hits the road, no pun intended. As far as that's concerned, the real reason, in my opinion, to get an EV over an internal combustion engine is cost. Because while EVs cost a little bit more money up front, the operation cost of an EV is astronomically lower than a regular car. And so, as an example, I've had my electric car now for a year and a half or so. I put a lot of miles on it. I put 66,000 miles on it. However, my maintenance cost has been zero because I don't need to get an oil change every 3,000 miles. I don't need to change spark plugs or to, and Stan's asking how many miles on it, which I just said. But I don't need to change spark plugs. I don't need to do anything except rotate the tires, and which you have to do with any car. And something breaks, but so far the only thing I've had break on the car is the rear windshield wiper, and that was replaced under warranty. But yeah, EVs, honestly, I think are a much more cost-effective means of transportation. The other, and by the way, the nice thing is, since a lot of people out there hand wave away EVs as being the stupid yuppie hit liberal thing to do, the resale value on EVs is incredibly low. And some people see that as a negative because, well, if I buy an EV, it won't be worth that much. Yeah, but if you want to buy an EV that's just a year or two old, you're going to save a lot of money. And don't listen to the myths about how the batteries die after a couple of years and all that. If you do the research, it's simply not true. EV batteries are pretty darn good. Now, the lithium batteries that they currently use, I would say, are not good enough. And that's where I think it was you, Stan, that said that we need better batteries. We'll get to that later, but I don't think the current generation of batteries is good enough long term. However, these solid state batteries that are coming out, starting on a few vehicles for the 2026 model year, which I believe Honda, the Zero series, is going to be run on solid state batteries. And Toyota has one that's going to be running on solid state batteries. And these solid state batteries weigh half as much as a lithium ion battery, which means you can put twice as many in a car. And they're talking about being able to make cars with 600-mile range on a single charge, and at a fast charger can recharge in 15 minutes. So that, I think, is where the future lies ultimately for EVs. However, Ford also recently unveiled an engine that runs off of water. So if that engine actually becomes everything they want it to be, Then just a second because Pepper is she's like, I don't want to go. Babe, you going to get her? All right. So the she's trying to hide in my beard. There. All right. Shoot. And give me just a second. Uh, I hate typing on phones. I really do. All right. All right. So, but if the Ford, I can't remember what it's called, the blue engine or something like that. But if that actually materializes, that could be a game changer. But it's going to have, and I think the reason that Ford wants to push that particular idea of basically what would be an internal combustion engine that runs off of the hydrogen that you get by electrolysizing water is that it would still require all the maintenance that any internal combustion engine requires. In fact, they'll probably need more. So I think that because I think the auto manufacturers, except for Tesla, because Tesla is an entirely EV driven company, the auto manufacturers don't like selling EVs because they make nothing off of maintenance, and that's a big deal to them because a lot of the dealerships make more money off of maintenance than they do off of selling the cars. Where with EVs, the maintenance zero. Then you also have so if Ford's hydrogen car works, then basically you'll just replace all the maintenance you currently do with a gasoline engine with all the same maintenance or more that you would do with their hydrogen engine. So that would be ingenious from the part of the car company, but but EVs, as far as the way that they work, I think is a proven winner. And there's a lot of good choices with EVs out there. I mean, I know people think of Tesla when they think of EVs, but man, the Cadillac Escalade IQ, yeah, it's a little pricier than a Cybertruck, but holy crap, you want to talk about luxury. If you don't have that kind of money, you look at something like the Cadillac Lyric, or you look at the Chevy Blazer or the Chevy Equinox. And of course, Ford has the Mustang Mach E, which I'm a big fan of. And the F 150 Lightning. There's the GMC Denali, the Hummer. The GM's got a ton of them. Honda's got the Zero Series that's coming out in the next year. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the long term. All right, so with all that, let me see. Man, I went on for way too long. Let's get into Leviticus chapter 7, shall we? And then we'll come back to your chats, which no doubt will be all EV related. So we're still in the offerings as far as regulations having to do with the offerings, but and we're going to wrap up the offerings. I can't remember if it's next week. And I'm going to try, if I can, since I wasn't able to do a live stream yesterday, I'm going to try to do one tomorrow, but I can't guarantee it yet. But let's get right into it. So chapter 7, Leviticus, because I really want to get into the laws and start talking about that. That's what's coming after we get through all the offering stuff. These are the regulations for the guilt offering, which is most holy. The guilt offering is to be slaughtered in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, and its blood is to be splashed on the sides of the altar. All its fat shall be offered, the fat tail and the fat that covers the internal organs, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which is to be removed with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering presented to the Lord. It is a guilt offering. Any male in a priest's family may eat it, but it must be eaten in the sanctuary area. It is most holy. The same law applies to both the sin offering and the guilt offering. They belong to the priest who makes atonement with them. The priest who offers a burnt offering for anyone may keep its hide for himself. Every grain offering is baked in an oven or cooked in a pan or on a griddle, belongs to the priest who offers it. And every grain offering, whether mixed with olive oil or dry, belongs equally to all the sons of Aaron. The fellowship offering. These are the regulations for the fellowship offering anyone may present to the Lord. If they offer it as an expression of thankfulness, then along with the thank offering, they are to offer thick loaves made without yeast and with olive oil mixed in, thin loaves made without yeast and brushed with oil, and thick loaves of the finest flour, well kneaded with oil mixed in. Along with their fellowship offering of thanksgiving, they are to present an offering with thick loaves of bread made with yeast. They are to bring one of each kind as an offering, a contribution to the Lord. So you got one of each of those loaves described. It belongs to the priest who splashes blood on the fellowship offering against the altar. The meat of their fellowship offering of thanksgiving must be eaten on the day it is offered. They must not leave none till morning. Seems a weird way to phrase it. If, however, the offering is made as a result of a vow or as a free will offering, the sacrifice shall be eaten on the day they offer it, but anything left over may be eaten on the next day. Any meat of the sacrifice left over till the third day must be burned up. If any meat of the fellowship offering is eaten on the third day, the one who offered it will not be accepted. It will not be reckoned to their credit, for it has become impure. The person who eats of it will be held responsible. Now, this sounds like with some of the other stuff, it sounds like, well, what a bunch of silly rules having to do with ritualistic offerings. It doesn't make any sense. However, obviously, if you think about it, they didn't have modern preserves, and they certainly didn't have refrigeration. And so, if you cooked a bull, right, that's a lot of meat, right? So, an adult bull might give you as much as 400 pounds of meat, even after you take out all the stuff that's part of the Lord's burnt offering. And so, there's bound to be, especially in the early days, because there aren't that many priests at this point, right? Because there's Aaron, who's the high priest, and his 4 sons, which are all priests. And I think that's pretty much it. And they're not going to eat 400 pounds of meat in a couple of days. However, certain offerings can be shared with the people as well. So, that's good. But if you keep unrefrigerated cooked meat for more than a day, it's probably not a good idea to eat it. Let's see. Meat that touches anything ceremonially unclean must not be eaten. It must be burned up. As for other meat, anyone ceremonially clean may eat it. But if anyone who is unclean eats any meat of the fellowship offering belongs to the Lord, they must be cut off from their people. And when they say cut off from their people, they're basically talking about exile. Anyone who touches something unclean, whether human uncleanliness or unclean animal or any unclean creature that moves along the ground, and eats of the meat of the fellowship offering belonging to the Lord must be cut off from their people. Now, so again, this sounds silly. Why is it that, okay, so someone touches a snake and then they eat some of the sacrificial meat, and so now they have to be exiled for that? And the thing is there something magical about touching a snake and then touching holy meat? No. But this is to remind the Jews how seriously to take the holiness of God. And so it's a symbolic gesture that has some very real consequences. And it's to make sure that that people are still, are taking it seriously. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, do not eat of the fat of cattle, sheep, or goats. The fat of an animal found dead or torn by wild animals may be used for other purposes, but you must not eat it. Anyone who eats the fat of an animal from which a food offering may be presented from the Lord must be cut off." Now, notice these are two different regulations. One is that you can't eat fat in general, and the other is that if you eat the fat of an animal that was used in an offering, then you are exiled. And wherever you live, you must not eat the blood of any bird or animal. Anyone who eats the blood must be cut off from their people. And again, this is a symbolic gesture because of the importance of blood. Blood is necessary for any covenant with God, which is part of the reason for these offerings. And blood is, the ultimate symbol of Christ. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, anyone who brings a fellowship offering to the Lord is to bring part of it as a sacrifice to the Lord, which their own hands they are to present the food offering to the Lord, and they are to bring the fat together with the breast and wave the breast before the Lord as a wave offering." Now, a wave offering is kind of a weird one, just so you're aware. So, it's literally a symbolic gesture to where they take the breast of the meat and they hold it up and they wave it around in different directions in as a symbolic gesture that, Lord, we offer this to you, but then the Lord says, "No, you go ahead." And I know it sounds weird, but hey, that's a lot of this is to symbolically remind the Jews of the authority of God, the sovereignty of God, and the fact that there is no other God. The priest shall burn the fat on the altar, but the breast belongs to Aaron and his sons. You are to give the right thigh of your fellowship offering to the priest as a contribution. The son of Aaron who offers the blood of the fat of the fellowship offering shall have the right thigh as his share. From the fellowship offerings of the Israelites, I have taken the breast that is waved and the thigh that is presented, and have given them to Aaron the priest and his sons as their perpetual share from the Israelites. This is a portion of food offerings presented to the Lord that we are allotted to Aaron and his sons on the day that we are presented to serve the Lord as priests. On the day they were anointed, the Lord commanded that the Israelites give this to them as their perpetual share for generations to come. And so theoretically, that should still be going on today, except that the temple was destroyed and the Ark of the Covenant is lost. And, what an interesting coincidence that happened just a few decades after Jesus died. These then are the regulations for the burnt offering, grain offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the ordination offering, and the fellowship offering, which the Lord gave to Moses at Mount Sinai in the desert of Sinai on the day he commanded the Israelites to bring their offerings to the Lord. So, there you go. But yeah, so I think that the offering stuff, like I said, it can be it's a little dry read, but at the same time, I think it's important as far as understanding this stuff. And there's where it's going to get a lot more interesting, I think, when we get into the laws, and I think that'll spark some interesting discussions. All right, so to the chat we go. I'm going to go right to where we were. I'm not going to stay on forever and a day, but I'll try to catch up and then we'll wrap things up. Bradley said, "Why not go the Star Wars route and attach all the cars to one big computer that knows all the roads better than we ourselves do?" Oh, that was the other thing about EVs, or not EVs necessarily, but self-driving vehicles. You know, I know people don't, they scoff at the idea a lot of the time. But if you have a vehicle that can drive itself, and most vehicles have that ability now, most modern vehicles at least have basic self-driving things like where they'll, if you're drifting towards the line, it'll push you back, stuff like that. So most cars have that ability to at least change the steering a little bit, and that's all you need, because that's number one. Number two, these cars are connected to the internet, and almost all new cars are in fact connected to the internet. With all GMs, the OnStar service comes with Wi-Fi hotspot as a basic option that comes with the OnStar service. Most modern cars have some kind of package deal where you can get Wi-Fi built into the car. That makes it extraordinarily dangerous, because if somebody was good enough at it, and I'm sure there are people around the world that are working on it, someone will eventually figure out a way to hack into the auto drive systems, and it won't take much. Like, let's suppose you sent a signal that every Tesla on the road suddenly had to veer to the right. You know, if and even like, okay, so, and not to pick on Tesla, you did it with all the actually not just EVs, all the Fords out there, all the GMs out there, any car that has like lane avoidance and emergency brakes and stuff like that built into it. All you got to do is be able to hack that, and it won't, and you don't have to take control, like holding a joystick and controlling the car. All you got to do is tell all the cars to veer to the right, and all of a sudden, how many people are you going to kill doing that? How many people are you going to injure doing that? And how much chaos would that cause if every modern car suddenly veered to the right all at once? It would be insane. And Eric says, "Sorry to hear about that with Puka." Yeah, it was rough. My wife actually held her while she died, and I don't think Puka was really suffering, but at the same time, yeah, it sucks. Sorry to hear about dog Puka dying. Yeah, they currently have use such cheaper power source for now. EVs need better batteries. Well, I talked about the battery thing a little bit, but I will tell you, if you compare the relative cost of gas to, that's another big difference in cost, by the way, is that typically I was, standard small car, you spend 40 to 50 bucks these days filling up your tank. And that, when I was driving Uber, so I was spending 40 to 50 bucks a day if I'd have a full day of driving Uber. However, with the EV, plugging it in on a level 2 charger at home when I go to bed, guess what? It charges up, overnight, and it only adds about $5 to the electric bill. So it's about 1/10 of the fuel cost. Jack Tripper versus Gilligan. Well, Jack Tripper would curb stop Gilligan. How does Mr. Bean defeat the Beyonder? Well, his usual method would probably work. The Beyonder would send like a death ray to kill Mr. Bean, and Mr. Bean would realize he needs to tie his shoe. He'd bend over. The death ray would hit a mirror. It would bounce back and kill the Beyonder. They even have to use loads of petroleum to build environmentally friendly windmills. Yeah, but that's the thing. But honestly, as I think petroleum is more useful to us, meaning humanity, as a construction material than it is as a fuel source. So I would much prefer that we use until we come up with a truly synthetic an affordable version of like plastics that's viable. I think petroleum should be used for that more than as fuel. It's kind of like it's funny because moon dust contains the helium-3 that we would need for fusion reactors, but moon dust also has some almost magical properties in some ways. So if you take moon dust and you heat it up, I can't remember what the temperature is, but to a very, very high temperature to where you actually get to the melting point of the material it's made out of. Then it fuses it together, and then when it cools, the brick that you get left is like hundreds of times stronger than concrete, which means on the surface of the moon is a virtually unlimited construction resource and fuel source that we could be using. Not colonizing the moon makes no sense. Solar powered vehicles for the masses would be great, though. Yes, but we are still generations away from an efficient enough solar cell. However, what solar power can do for us is if you put a couple of banks of solar cells on your house, and you including the battery backup system and all that for it, then you could essentially charge your car 100% free, but you would also be able to run your house 100% free. Solar power is viable for that. It's expensive though. That's the only real drawback, is that while it does save money in the long run, it takes like 10 years for it to pay for itself, and it's only got a 20-year lifespan. No, you didn't miss the reading, at least not at that time. Let's see. Yeah, I got stuck on EV car talk. Jack Tripper has equal from Mexican TV show called El Chavo Don Ramon. Never heard of it. Let's see. And trying to get past some of the stuff that was answered in the conversation. Engine that runs off of water is nothing new. Years ago, the private individual already made an engine like that, though after his death, it all disappeared. There are a lot of, I'll call them what they are, urban myths or urban legends about various water-powered cars that someone developed, and either they were bought out by the big auto manufacturers to prevent it from ever hitting market, which makes no sense because the big auto manufacturers, if it was a viable solution, would want to jump all over that to get ahead of their competition. Or the big oil companies would have them assassinated, or the big oil companies would buy them out and then bury the plans. There's a million stories like that. However, I've yet to see a document from 1979 that actually shows a viable plan for a water-based engine, other than water equals hydrogen and oxygen. You split them, you have unlimited hydrogen. Theoretically, people have known that for a long, long time, but and Stanley says Audi. I'm not sure why. Talking about EVs. I've never looked into the Audis because they're generally a little too pricey. Forgotten History did a video about it and other inventions that were disappeared by the government. Well, again, unless, and I know that it's hard because here's the problem with conspiracy theories. If you want to convince me that your conspiracy theory is true, you got to show me some evidence that it's true. And the problem is, like I said, there's no consistency with it. There's a million different versions of the story, and it's been around since I was a little kid. Won't we run out of water using it as a resource? No, because for one thing, even if we dried up every lake and river on the planet, which, since they kind of annually refresh themselves, isn't really entirely possible, unless global warming truly went runaway. And if that happens, we're all dead anyway. But the simple fact of it is that the oceans cover the majority of the surface of the planet, and while you would have to run them through a desalinization process, that's dirt cheap technology. And and that's the sad thing, is that there are good solutions to many of the world's problems already developed, but the people just don't want to pay for it. Desalinization is one of them. California is going through a huge annual problem with a drought. And it's not really a drought because of the weather, it's a drought because Southern California is sucking away all the water from the Central Valley, which is all rich agricultural land. And so, as Southern California takes all their water, their crops die on the vine. And so, the solution is easy: build some water desalination plants in LA. But they don't want to do that because that costs money. But desalinization of the oceans is a virtually unlimited resource, and the beauty of it is that even as if you used it as a fuel, you separate the hydrogen and oxygen, and eventually those molecules, will form more water that will basically rain back down and replenish the ocean. And yes, Audi does have the e-tron range of. Some of them are hybrids, some of them are EVs. Ever try hy- hypotism? I have no idea what that is. So let's see if I search for it. Let's see, Hypotieze. Oh, hypnotism. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. Uh, Yeah, I think you misspelt it, I think. But if you're talking about, have I ever tried hypnotism as far as have I ever been hypnotized? Once when I was a kid, but, you know, it is what it is. Forgotten History is done by two former military personnel. The main guy served in the Army and Marines. He was even a history professor. I'm, you know what, Robert, here's the problem. I'm not doubting what you're saying is what you see on the YouTube channel. However, it's a YouTube channel. You can say you're professor of whatever you want to say, as long as you sound convincing, then people will buy it. You can say you're a former soldier, and people, you can say, most people know I was in the Army. I could sit there and say, well, I did this and this and that. I might be lying about it, but you wouldn't know the difference. So, just because someone claims some kind of authority to me doesn't necessarily mean that I believe them unless they're speaking within their area of expertise specifically. Now, you do say he was a history professor. Great. Show me the history book that shows the documentation of these water-powered cars. Let's see. And saying to Josiah he's getting sleepy. Oh, because of the hypnotism thing. Harsh, not sure what you're talking about there. Hello tonight. Let's see. Nowadays, I don't trust any snake after I found out years ago that they've been crossbreeding for years now. Oh, yeah. In fact, one of the worst crossbreeds of snakes that I know of was in California. We had a problem with rattlesnakes crossbreeding with garter snakes. And the problem is, it basically made a rattleless rattlesnake. Not good. The agent that played Agent 13 in the Get Smart TV show just passed away a couple of days ago. Well, that sucks. I'm sure they were old, but I don't know. There was a theory quite a while ago that a reporter's car was hijacked to drive into a tree because he was going to release some scandalous story. No sign of braking. I don't know about that particular incident, but you know what? There's a show. I can't remember exactly what it's called now, but it involves Upload or Uploaded or something like that, where people, when they're about to die, they have their brain scanned, and that way they can live for all eternity in a virtual paradise. And it's got some, evil shenanigans and stuff that ensue. And part of the story is the fact that he had a car that was hacked and driven into like the river or something. And that's been done in multiple movies in the past where, in fact, heck, the recent Naked Gun movie had a scene like that, where there was a self-driving car that tried to drive Frank Drebin into the river. The other day I found out the 2025 Corvette ZR1 from testing on track reached speeds of 233 consistently. Who needs a car like that? Nobody, but, if the main thing is bragging rights. It's like when Ford, like if you've seen Ford versus Ferrari, Ford didn't develop the Shelby in order to sell a bunch of Shelbys. They did it so that people would talk about how Ford made the fastest cars in the world, right? Same thing. So same thing like when you're talking about this Corvette ZR1. I don't know if 233 miles per hour is makes it the fastest production car, assuming that's what the production car is and it's not tweaked. I don't know if that makes it the fastest production car or not, but if it does, that's the reason, is so that GM can claim they make the fastest car. But does anybody need a car that goes 233 miles an hour? Not unless you use a life or death situation where you got to get somewhere that's 233 miles away within 1 hour. And even then, you're probably going to die if you try to do it on any kind of public roads. Did GM bury a bunch of electric cars like 30 years ago? Not that I'm aware of, but GM is currently producing more lines of electric cars than any other company. I mean, Chevy's got 3 or 4 electric cars. Cadillac's got 3, I think. Hummer has 1. And actually Chevy's got 5, I think. So there's the Hummer, and what's the other one I'm not thinking of? The Denali, the GMC Denali is actually one of the best. It's probably the best EV truck on the market. What was I doing in the 80s? Lots of things. Everything from, seeing the, Star Trek II in theaters more times than I can count, graduating from high school, meeting my future wife, all happened in the 80s. Austin Powers versus Johnny English. I see. I would probably have to give that one to Johnny English because he's actually English. Creep says, "I'm here. You can start the stream now." Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Jack Tripper versus Archie Bunker. Again, I think Jack Tripper would curb stomp Archie Bunker because Archie Bunker, even though there are some people I think Archie could take, Jack is in just too good a shape compared to Archie. NCIS, not sure why you say that. I remember that story about a reporter, Stanley. He was a reporter for Rolling Stone. He supposedly had dirt on the Clintons. Yeah, because there's no dirt on the Clintons to be found. NCIS had a hacked car murder plot. Just watch the episode. Okay. 233 is fast, but not the fastest. Okay. That's still Bugatti. The Chiron or Hura, whatever it is. Okay. I don't really keep track of supercars, to be honest with you, because I think they're a waste of money. Yeah. Too bad we don't have flying cars yet. Well, it's funny. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson argued that we do have flying cars. They're called helicopters. But yeah, I tend to agree. I think flying cars would be cool, but I think flying cars would also be incredibly dangerous if there were, because flying cars, you have two options. You either make it so that they're entirely autopiloted drones, and if you did that, they'd probably be safer ish, but of course they'd be vulnerable to hacking. And what happens if there's a network outage? You can't go anywhere, right? The other option is that you have some kind of manual control in addition to autopilot. You probably have to have some kind of autopilot, but you could have manual control in addition to that. The big problem there is a lot of people would fly into the side of a mountain. Take your fast car and keep on driving. Josiah says, what if someone robbed young Michael with Kung Fu? Then they would get my stuff. It's the fastest car under $1 million. Okay. And Stanley puts in a Wikipedia article on who killed the electric car. I assume I've heard of Who Killed the Electric Car. I think that's the documentary you're talking about. I can't click on the link from there, so I got to go into YouTube and bring up. Let's see. What was I thinking of? Oh yeah, I gotta go to my channel. Sorry, sometimes my brain just kind of short circuits. Go to the actual live stream, and then click on the link. All right. Yeah, Who Killed the Electric Car is a 2006 American documentary film created by Chris Payne. Explores the creation, limited commercialization, and subsequent destruction of the battery electric vehicle in the United States, specifically the General Motors EV1 in the mid-1990s. I'm sure that GM's story is probably going to be that the EV1 just didn't sell, because even now it's hard to sell electric cars in comparison to gas cars. For one thing, there are all the myths about electric cars and all that, but let's see. The film explores some of the motives behind what pushed the auto and oil industries to kill off the electric car. For example, the oil companies were afraid of losing their monopoly on transportation fuel. Well, yeah, but the oil companies don't decide who GM is, what GM is building. I don't know what their argument there is, but while the auto companies feared short-term costs for EV development, long-term revenue loss because EVs require little maintenance and no tune-ups. Talked about that earlier. Others explain the killing differently. GM spokesman Dave Barthmus argues a lack of a consumer image due to a maximum range of 80 to 100 miles per charge and the relatively high price. See, that's, to me, more likely the truth. Because, I'll be honest with you, I'm not saying that the people at GM are saints. I'm sure they're all just as twisted as evil as any other maniacal James Bond villain CEO. However, in the end, what these companies want is to make money. And I guarantee you that if the General Motors EV1, if it was selling as fast as they could produce them, they'd still be making them today. But, they obviously, the battery technology wasn't nearly there yet. And, having an 80 to 100 mile range would be fine if it's just a car for going to the store and getting groceries. Did the hypnotism, I assume you were saying, work on you? Are you asking, in a sense, I guess? I mean, you get, if you allow yourself to be hypnotized, you can get into a more relaxed state than you normally are. Apparently, GM tried releasing electric car in 1999, but the project was shut down. Extra cars literally burned. The EV1. But the problem is that in 1999, the tech just wasn't there. And and that's where I think Tesla has done so much good for the industry, because Tesla really pushed battery technology, because that was their stumbling block early on as well. And most of the car batteries in electric cars today are based on that technology that Tesla developed, and Elon helped bankroll. The So that's great. That's a good thing. But do I think that there's some conspiracy that EVs were kept away from the market uh, because they're bad for oil or whatever? No, I can see why oil companies wouldn't like it, but they would have no way of stopping the large auto manufacturers from making them. It does suck, but that's just what the truth of it was. Just like like hydrogen fuel cells is another thing people were talking about as a possible thing, and they are not practical because basically you have a hydrogen fuel cell car, you are not going to have a trunk. But yeah, maybe get flying drones. I think that's the closest we'll get. If they can get quadcopters efficient and powerful enough to lift people and cargo. Well, actually, I saw a demo of a quadcopter drone that was capable of lifting a human and transporting him, like I think something like 50 miles or something. It was developed in China, and that's another thing that people are forgetting. The United States is way behind the game compared to China right now when it comes to some of this tech. China currently has EVs that are comparable to like the Tesla Model 3, which I think starts at the Tesla Model 3 starts in like the mid 30s, I believe, as far as price tag. And they have an EV that's comparable to it for $10,000. Right? They are absolutely, and they have so many different electric vehicles. Some of them are really cool, but you can't buy them because our government doesn't want to let China sell cars in the U.S. Because of protectionist policies. I disagree with protectionism philosophically, but I do understand the fear. Look up El Chavo. Why? I'm not gonna. I'm not just. Dude, you can't just bark orders at me. No. If you tell me that something like that, I'm gonna immediately say no. John Wayne versus Lee Van Cleef. If they have guns, I would probably give it to John Wayne. If they do not have guns, I would give it to Lee. Josiah Saltchecker isn't a Western fan. That is true. Um, doesn't matter. He know who they are. I don't. I have no idea what you're talking about, Josiah. I genuinely don't. Are you saying I know who El Chavo is? Like the actor, or I assume that's an actor. Uh, um, or El Chavo is, I don't know what that is, but it's like a cartoon character or something. But yeah, doesn't look like something that I would care about. Plus, it looks like most of the articles about it are in Spanish, so I assume it's a Spanish thing. And so, again, don't speak Spanish, and you know, I don't have a fascination with Latin culture. No, not that I hate them or anything. I just don't have a particular fascination with it. Hypnoturd, bring it back. I was thinking about that. I love Hypnoturd. And on that lovely note, we're going to wrap it up. But thank you for hanging out with me, guys, as always. And hopefully tomorrow we'll get into Leviticus chapter 8. And then let me see if we look at. Yeah, Leviticus chapter 8 deals with the ordination of Aaron and his sons. Chapter 9 is a little bit of history about the beginning of their ministry, as is chapter 10. And then chapter 11 is where we will start the actual laws the Levitical laws. And I think this will become very interesting as we get into them. I wasn't talking about El Chavo. I was talking about John Wayne and Lee Van Cleef. Okay, you said, look up El Chavo. That's all you said. So what am I supposed to do with that? And then you say, bye. Okay,